episode 2 of Beneath the Surface, where we're going to get deep with some deep Wellians. I got my special guest, Dustin Loiselle, VP of Global Technology and Product Development here with us today. Again, John Sabo joining you, Senior VP of Leadership, Training and Development here at Deepwell. We like to bring some Deepwell warriors on here to talk about it. We've got some people that have been here for a while, and we're going to talk a lot about innovation today. Really where I want to start at is just taking it back to the beginning. I think it'd be great for a lot of the people to hear a story of Dustin's, beginnings. And I think just how that shaped where he's at today. So, Dust, why don't you talk to us a little bit about where you grew up, how it all started, and how some of that may have shaped what you're doing now.
You really want to go there, huh?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I grew up in a small town in British Columbia, which is in Canada, for those people that don't know that. I grew up actually with Brian, Sean, and Tug, small little town, 10,000 people. Little farming community with some oil and gas going on the side. Coming from there, you got pretty humble roots, And for me, it was, I just started going into college. I wanted to either do mechanical engineering or petroleum. And I really didn't know what the oil field was all about. It was actually on my 18th birthday. You had to be 18 to work rigs out in Alberta there. Yeah, either way, I left home and drove down to Red Deer. Hooked up with somebody, hey, can I get out on a rig? And the next day I was actually out on a rig, a little service rig. A lot of learning curve. But yeah, fast forward, spent some time on the service rigs, went back to school, bounced over to drilling rigs. Loved the drilling rigs. We were outlawing the spinning chains and the conventional stuff up in Canada that year. And not too many people call the company and ask, hey, do you have an old Kelly rig with a spinning chain onto it? People didn't want to work on that. And I remember talking to this woman, and she's just like, yeah, I don't know. I'll ask. I'll find out. Any particular reason? I said, I want to work on that stuff before it goes away. Like that stuff that, some of the older boys worked on. So went out and worked on an old drilling rig like that, and I really learned the hard way what that was like, Part of me going through all those stages was there's a way better way to do these things. It was kind of a funny story how I got into snubbing. I was working derricks on a drilling rig and pulled up to the pumps there in Red Deer one day, ran into Levan, and he was fueling up his nice new F-350 he had just bought. I'm like, what the hell you been up to, man? He said, yeah, absolutely. I'm just getting set up, operating, junior operating, running a rig, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. He's just like, let's get together all the rest. And really what happened was, I drove on over to the High Arctic office and, without him and all those things, and just walked in there and started a conversation. And pretty soon I was at the operations manager's desk, BSing with him, and ultimately got a job that day. And Levan ended up walking past the hallway and looked over, and he was kind of shocked. What are you doing here? I said, I just met this Arnold guy, so I'm going out to work. He was pretty quick to be like, yeah, I want him on my rig, So it was great, getting into that experience where they actually had training and some pretty good equipment and all that. Snubbing was always cool coming from the service side or the drilling side, because at that time it was only used for well control. And really going through that process with High Arctic up there, a lot of us, we took that from a well control sort of setting into, mainstream service offering. Particularly, on the more hippie side of me, it's the protection of our natural resources. I don't like killing wells, period. I like getting the cleanest barrel out of the ground, the best way we can, right? And snubbing really showed me that there's a better process to do that. We had a great time. We learned a lot of things there. But unfortunately, the only bad thing was no days off ever. You just worked, man. You just worked. I remember going 112 days and whatever in the bush, middle of nowhere. You don't see civilization, and it's 40 below and all that great stuff. So you kind of learn to work with what you got. Train everybody you can, the best you can, right? So on our particular rig, everybody snub pipe, everybody could pick the unit, everyone could do all those things, right? And at the time, the company was doing some pretty cool things, expanding their service offerings and getting into some new rig designs, and we deployed a lot of that stuff. The market was shifting a little bit more into drill out space, like what we experience here today. So it was fun being part of that journey. And really with that lack of days off, it really provoked us to go work international. Month on, month off. That was really the lure and the next step in everyone's career. So yeah, we hightailed it on over to some really lovely places in the world. Learned how to live in 20-foot sea cans in the jungle and go through all that social side of things, where the tribes are fighting all the time, and God only knows what would happen, Very interesting places, and bounced around through the Middle East, and eventually we got ourselves offshore and did some pretty interesting work, and took some equipment and converted it into a drilling rig. Did some open hole drilling out in New Zealand, and that was just wonderful. And that really opened my eyes to taking something and adapting and evolving to do another practice and process, right? So that really kicked off a few things there. Having a desk engineer, you got a concept, you run it on into the office, they'd evaluate a few things, get back to you, and next thing you know, a couple months later, there's a new piece of equipment out there helping you do your job better, right? So I really liked that momentum, right? We all ended up, over at E&Ps and all these different things, and it was pretty interesting how I ended up over here at Deepwell, but essentially, Bots and I, we were working our last, 3 jobs together, and we're back-to-backs, and we had a little lull going from Gabon on up to Nigeria for about 6 months, waiting on, the vessel and the paperwork and all those things to clear, and I forget who it was. It was Levan or Lyons called me up and asked me if I wanted to come back into snubbing. I said, not particularly. I'm kind of like doing what I'm doing here right now and all these things. But you know what it was? He said, Deepwell, you're gonna love Deepwell. It's like the good old days that we created before, but it's just down in America, and we're all here. And you know how it is. You see these guys, they're your friends, but unless you're working with them, sometimes you don't see them for years. So I said, what the hell? I said, I'll come on down for 6 months and check this out. Mark Marmo, he wrote me an email. I was out on first hitch, and he asked me what I thought of the company, a couple things like that, and I didn't hold back. I gave him the good, the bad, the ugly, and he was very responsive to it, right? Next thing you know, it was, why don't you come on in and visit with me, Came on in, had a visit. He asked me after my first hitch, which was a month, would you be willing to come on down here and, set up the maintenance department? I said, well, I'll have a look at it. It wasn't really my course of action. He said, bring your family on down. And you remember this. Thank you very much. You took care of us and gave us a tour, and I still got that same old basket for the housewarming present. So anyways, it was a very quick decision. We transitioned. Just seeing that sneak peek at Deepwell was a pivotal moment for myself, where I gave up a good career over on the E&P side, because I really felt over here at Deepwell it was the right people, the right culture, and they were actually practicing what they preach. A lot of organizations say something, but they don't do it. And Mark's belief in all of us being better than we are, period. And he's like, don't worry if you haven't done this before. I'll give you the tools and the resources, the guidance, and just go ahead and figure this out. And we all worked together and did that. So really wonderful time here at Deepwell, just seeing the transition from the good old rig assist type days. I really think you guys did a great move bringing in the original standalone units out of Canada to really start that process here. Over the years, refining that process, period, has just been a wonderful ordeal to be part of. Turning on 25 rigs, you learn a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so speaking of that, I think, it's important, like as far as innovation of the units, we're about 8 generations in on our upgrades for the units since 2014. As we've gone through that process, we've changed a lot of things, within the units from a safety perspective, from an efficiency perspective. And then the other side of it too is something we've been focusing on now is the ancillary equipment and really deep welling the pad, and looking at like what's the catalyst around that and just your previous experience, the things that you've been through before to kind of facilitate that. Because, obviously you've been right smack dab in the middle of that as we continue to keep progressing through all these changes that we've had. So, what kind of was the catalyst for you to say, hey, I think this is a really good opportunity for us on this ancillary equipment for us to be able to tack some more of these complementary services into these HCUs, bring some more technology and innovation in, and what's that look like on the backside?
Yeah, for me, it was quite simple, really. I don't like anything that's segmented. Everything out there is a system. From the mud pumps to the chem unit to the HCU itself, it all has to work in harmony, period, right? When I was, supervising on a rig, it wasn't so much just about the rig crew. It was more about everybody on site. I need you guys to be doing this and all the rest of it. And I really worked towards that system. As we went through that transformation that we were, digitizing the oil field, you really got a better understanding that there was a better way of doing this rather than just talking to you, making sure you're on point, all the rest of it, where you have the data in front of your face. More so, you have equipment speaking to each other, right? And if you can capture the power of what each piece of equipment working together can do for that well and your overall process, you've got a winning recipe.
No, that's good. And just to kind of rewind it back even to the beginning, before you even got into the oil field, growing up, was there anything that really kind of stood out, or just opportunities? I mean, I think it'd be good for everybody to know just the scenarios or situations or things that kind of molded you into the person that you are today.
Oh.
Growing up, before you got into the oil field, what did you run into, and some things that you went through that, got you interested in innovating, interested in making those type of quick changes, right, to be able to make things work?
Well, I suppose most kids, my family, they owned a towing business, and they eventually got into some oil field transport and logistic type stuff. So I've got two brothers, one older, pretty good creator, and let's just say we're kind of some wild boys at times, right? Dad always had some pretty good guys working for him that would teach us things, about welding and this and that. Demolition derbies, they're fun, especially when you're 12 years old, right? So you get into modifying things and making it better for a different purpose. We'd take Dad's skid steer and build a motocross track, and all of our buddies would come over, especially if our parents were down in Vancouver or something like that, and we'd have a good old time. So we really got hands-on on understanding, hey, let's do this to the car, work on this motor, or whatever. So that was a piece of me, it was always kind of on that mechanical industrial type side, and pretty humble upbringing. Wonderful. I wouldn't have changed a damn thing about it, Always got that backbone, and my older brother, just brilliant individual, inventor, creator. And even within my family, my grandfather's patents and all the things that he created, right down to an engine that ran on motor oil that we sold to Ford, farming equipment, cattle prods, a bulldozer he built from scratch, just interesting family blood, a lot of his stuff still in the museum up there in Dawson. Pretty cool, just veins of like, what do you have? What can you do with it? We got to solve this problem. How are we going to get there? When you only got so much, you figure it out,
Yeah, I mean, and that's the key, right? And I think that's what I wanted a lot of people to hear, because I've heard all these stories from you over the years, man, and I wanted to be able to get that out to the troops and everyone that's going to watch this. All the things that you've been through within the industry and how it's changed and how it's evolved, measuring that with the current energy climate and the innovation aspect of it currently. What gets you excited every day when you're getting up to come in?
Where we're at this awesome moment in time right now. We can see everything changing around us in our day-to-day lives, right? The oil field is one that has been evolving, but I would say this, that it hasn't been evolving at the same rate as others. We grew up in the traditional oil field, and right now we're building that bridge to the intelligent one, the one of the future. Ultimately, what gets me the most excited is, we're not watching the wave, we're not following this or what have you. We're creating that wave within our own space, right? For all the other sectors of the oil field, whether it was drilling or frack, what they've done over there on the successes and what can be implemented through our own unique success. Like our space is quite small. We're ready for a big step change here. Part of my mindset around this is, of course, deep well the pad. Make that system. The other aspect is get back into this HCU. We've been working through further enhancements, problem solvings, and ultimately one of my goals there is, take your best operator, your best operator you ever did see versus your guy that just got set up, right? And I really want to equip him, the new guy, with the best tools, the best equipment, where we just level that playing field and we're consistent, Of course, part of that process, everything you do, safety isn't like a feature. It's an obligation. So every change we bring in, that's ingrained into it, right? Like just part of it now. So I want to have equipment that is not only, faster, smarter, speaking to each other, predicting. I want to have equipment that is smarter, more user-friendly, and equipping the operators and the supervisors, all the guys on the rig, for success. So that's what gets me excited. Working on equipment that was primitive, and you had to make it work. I had the Bourgeois brothers send me some of their old photographs and things to that nature from way back in the day. I laid it all out on my desk, and the evolution of this space and where we are at right now, it's wonderful. Yeah. So many generations down the line with Deep Well's product. The next change is going to be a big change. The way that we convey our pipe is a big piece that I'm looking at here now, everything to do with pipe control and sophisticated systems, the auto drilling system. You know, we think to a certain degree, right? Computers think to a certain degree in milliseconds. Evolve all that information together. Ultimately, you know, we use cruise control in our vehicles every day, right? Autopilots and all those things on our flights, right? Give those operators a bit of a break, you know, let that machine take over when they want it to, that kind of an idea. There's a lot of things coming down the pipe. You know, we're talking about a few of them here right now. Back in the lab, let's say, there's a bunch of pretty interesting things that are happening as well. And those will be released in the near future.
Yeah, it's
some exciting
It's on
stuff.
the down low.
It's on the down low.
It's in the
right
lab,
now.
like you said. It's in the lab.
It's in the lab. So
But I think it's cool that you brought up a couple things. One, you know, Alan and Sterling, right?
Yeah.
There's just a lot of different innovations and things that come out of them, and the stories and the pictures from back in the day.
Oh God, yeah.
Another thing, you know, we talk a lot about it, and we were talking about it before the podcast today. Just different, interesting text chains that I've had set up with multiple deep wellians over the years. Those two is food.
Yeah.
Right? When 15% of your staff's from Louisiana and they're all Cajun boys,
Right.
they know how to cook, right? So I'm getting in their hip pocket to learn how to cook as good as I possibly can. Another thing, you know, while we're on the text chain subject and we're talking about that, something we connected with many years ago, right? And we got a crew, we got a group of guys over the years that we've spent a lot of time with. So talk about that a little bit. Music.
Yeah.
Right? We all dig music. I think a lot of people in the industry, you need things to keep getting you going,
Absolutely.
right? And things to kind of fire you up and things to get through some of those challenging times. But let's talk about that text chain a little bit. I mean, you can break it down for us.
Sets the mood early in the morning, you know. A lot of us do the workouts in the morning. We're driving into work, you know, you're thinking about everything for the day, and it's pretty good. One of them heavy rip it songs kind of come in. It kind of sets the pace for the day. Can't help but think every time I hear Rage Against the Machine, I think of you now, you know. And also, Jay, at a certain event we won't talk about here right now. But yeah, that man can really dance in front of a crew truck at 40 below in the middle of the woods to Rage Against the Machine. Don't ask me how he got into it, but either way, you know, you got to let those demons out once in a while, right? I think it's great for us to connect on that level. I mean, music is an important piece for people that really appreciate it. And I can't help but think or even mention this right now, but, you know, the acoustic guitar aspect, you know, it's beautiful, it's right there, it's raw, it's real, right? And start thinking about the Oilfield right now. We're kind of the acoustic guitar. And what we're doing here now is setting up that amp and setting up that electric guitar so we can really make it loud, you know, through the way of automation and data and everything we're doing back here at Deepwell.
Love that analogy. Balancing, you know, kind of the automation portion with this and human intuition. I think it's definitely something we're smack dab in the middle of right now. Industry's been built on boots on the ground experience and the people that are out there working. Like, how do you balance that? And like, what are you taking into consideration as you're making some of these changes?
For me, I've got a belief that it's not about replacing people, okay? Personally, I like human interaction. I like all those things. For me, it's about removing repetition. If it takes you 17 steps to do something, but you can do it in one, what are you going to choose to do? And again, about that use of data, right? That intelligence layer and that prediction within the wellbore, that prediction within the equipment health itself, right? That's really where I'm sinking my teeth onto. The amount of manual inputs that we presently do in this oil field, particularly within our space, there is so much room to improve that overall. I want the guys to be ultimately, you know, hitting the same or better KPIs, period, without so much involvement, without so many steps, where the equipment is an extension of their own body, working for them. That's my belief around automation, is improving a process and assisting the people.
You can encounter some folks that are very resistant to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very, very resistant to something that's, you know, they've been doing one way for 20 years and now it's going to be a little bit different. How do you get past that? You know, how do you serve that one up to be able to try to say, hey, this is what we're looking at. We've really done a lot of research with this. How are we going to get past this?
Over the years, you got to think about how many archived pieces of data we have. Every well that we do, every pad that we do, that amount of intelligence is remarkable, period. So when you're doing selections, whether it's, you know, this is the well construction design, we run the torque and drag models, all those different things. Well, hey, here's a great bit, here's a motor for it, we have these conditions, all the rest of it. We like to run at this RPM, this weight on bit, right? We now have in the digital tool hand into bore sight. Wonderful feature. How much more can you extrapolate off of that? We're bringing in the Gen 2 pumps now, the more sophisticated prime systems onto there. Great partner that are going to adapt systems for what we need. The new automated drill out skid, right, where that's going to sync the HCU to the pumps and the chem unit, right? And one thing I really love about that one is that repetitious aspect, where, you know, generally speaking, these guys are running into that manifold, swinging valves, doing this, cleaning out the junk catchers, all the rest of it. This particular piece of equipment is so sophisticated in understanding what we're doing in the overall process of that drill out that it automatically shifts for you. It does the safety sensing, it does the clean out, you know, that's what I'm talking about, you know. So instead of that individual being out there on standby and running in there and doing the valves and all the rest of it, he's watching the machine think for him, right? He's making sure it's doing what it needs to. He's monitoring conditions, and he's not in the red zone anymore. We reduced that down to like 90%. We can even go further with a automatic greasing system onto that as well. So it's about each one of these pieces as we deep well this pad, right? It's not about replacing equipment. You know, a lot of other service companies, let's just, you know, get into this and whatever. It's commoditized. It's just adding a different arsenal of service offerings. What we're doing here at Deepwell is bringing those pieces in and rethinking it, you know, going from that red ocean to that blue ocean. How should we do this? Forget everything we know right now on, you know, what's been done in the past. We need to solve this problem. We need these conditions. Let's do this, right? And it's pretty great. Earlier this year, I set up a system on how we evaluate a great idea and take it from, you know, a great idea into R&D, and ultimately the process through our organization, right up to the commercial viability of it, strategic fit, all those elements. Getting a board ready for approval, we get that stamped, we run it on back down. Guess what? We got ourselves a new project. We got ourselves a new product. Point the team. And the teams are amazing. I have several different committees. A lot of them are behind the scenes, a lot of different subject matter experts that help us through this, right? We derive this plan, and, you know, not all plans are 100% off the rip, right? We're always going to have adjustments, but, you know, I'm really proud to say that our accuracy is like right in the 90s already, and we're improving every step as we go. The amount of product that we turned on last year already, you know, with chemical injection, you know, we got our first unit out there, you know, sample the market, let's say, and it was pretty quick. It was like, turn on another one. Okay, this company wants 4 of them. Let's go. We're going to finish the year off here with 9 of those units. That's what I love to see, right? And it's great from the engineering aspect too, because when I had a kickoff meeting with those guys earlier this year, getting to know them a little bit better and setting expectations and all those different things, right? One of the things I left them with was that Deepwell of tomorrow is started here today within this room. Like, you guys are developing the new equipment, the new face of the company. It sounds a little bit bold, right? But it's not. And the way that we are at Deepwell and the way we need to be in this new oil field, it is bold. If you're not bold, you're going to be left behind. But those guys generally, they give it all they can, and having that team is exactly where I wanted this organization to be several years ago. I had dreamt about having a rig manufacturing arm, a true engineering department, you know, with a wide band of, you know, between automation, mechanical, electrical. So now when we have a problem come up, problems are great, they're challenges, and people ultimately pay you to solve their problems. And it's no different in the oil field, right? So now when we can bring in, here's the problem, frame it, look at the viable solutions, let's derive a plan around this. What is out there? What can we do? Back to what excites me is how fast we can make changes, how fast we can get something out the door. It's not just this group of individuals doing all these things, right? They may be at the forefront and dealing with this stuff intimately day to day through the Ripcard program. You know, we've got 650 brilliant minds out there. Majority of that, from the field, the guys that live and breathe this and see it for 12 hours a day, put in a rip card. We've seen this system derive some amazing changes. And the youngest guy, the greenest guy on the rig, 2 weeks in, sees something that can be totally done in a different manner. And short story is, he's a multimillionaire. He was bold enough to identify something, go out, make a change, bring it back in, and caught on like wildfire, and away you go, right? Those things exist here at Deepwell too, right? So through that system, that intelligence system, communication, raising it, right? The electric power pack, for instance, we just turned it online, right? That development, really, we were ahead of our time. Years ago, Matt and I, we drafted that one up, looked at everything from natural gas turbines to, electric motors, all these things. And 7 years later, our market was ready for it. Call comes in, conversations start happening. All right, let's pull this one on out of the archives. Here we go. Listening to the operator of that rig the other day, when he came on down out of the basket, they just hit TD actually. And they did that entire well with that new electric power pack, right? And we had already spoke to the client, and they were tickled pink. They started the conversation with, we don't particularly like change sometimes, right? A lot of guys try to bring out new equipment. They don't integrate it effectively. It wasn't designed with all conditions thought of, right? Well, how do you feel about this, And they said, ultimately, quote was, you knocked it out of the park. You guys thought about every angle of this thing. I said, what could we have done better? And ultimately, there wasn't anything there. And we deployed that 3 months ahead of, their original expectations, right?
One of the coolest things, and one of the things I'm most excited about, is the RIP program.
Yeah.
Relentless Improvement Program, because probably every episode that we have, you're going to hear the word relentless probably 3 or 4 times. That's just the way we are here. But I'm really excited about that, because that's a way for us to continually stay ahead, right?
It is.
And I think that that's something with you taking, taking the reins of that program, and us having the opportunities and the people here to be able to help facilitate that. We're positioned very well for the future. And to me, that's extremely exciting, especially with all the innovation that we have coming down the line.
I really want those voices to be heard from the field, period. As we get larger, a lot of the challenges in going from a small company to a larger organization is making sure that you have direct and open, honest feedback, particularly around, equipment and process and how we do our business, right? Because how we do our business today, it is great. Don't get me wrong, it is. But do we ever settle it great? How hard do we work for that last 1%? The future, we're constructing it right now.
And it's exciting. It's really exciting.
It is.
It's a great time to be where we're at and be able to look at the international expansion and all the things that are going to come with it, and tacking on the ancillary services to deep well the pads, and continually keep expanding that from an international perspective, utilizing the technology and innovation, right? Really appreciate Dustin Loiselle joining us today. I mean, I think that we got a lot of great information, and I thought we got pretty deep today. We got a lot of cool stuff out there, and I'm excited for others to hear your story.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time, man. I thought it was great. Well spent.
Awesome.
That's a wrap.